Hello everyone, my name is Miranda Fox and today we are going to be talking about gamification with Classcraft. So Classcraft is a website that allows you to essentially gamify any content area. It provides a nice platform where you can insert your own questions, assignments, things like that, and assign scores to your students. So on the Classcraft website, it says, Classcraft uses gaming principles to reimagine students' learning experience and empowers them to reach their full potential. So some of the main features, it includes that it's interactive, so students get to interact with things as they work on content. It can be both teacher-paced or self-paced timelines, so the teacher can set deadlines, unlock things at certain times, and kind of force students to work at their timeline, or they can allow the students to work through things at their own pace. And then also, it has motivation for students through game-like features, such as earning XP for completing objectives, or teachers can add XP for students who show exemplary behaviors in class. So the content standards that my specific game covers are both algebra concepts. One is for calculating and interpreting the average rate of change of a function over a specified interval and estimating the rate of change from a graph, and then also creating equations in two or more variables to represent relationships between quantities, as well as graph equations on coordinate axes with labels and scales. Then the curricular goals that it's covering. By the end of the activity, the students will be able to determine the slope of a line from a graph, table, and two given points, determine whether a line has a slope of 0, undefined slope, positive, or negative slope, determine the slope and y-intercept from a graph in slope-intercept form, write the equation of a line given a slope and y-intercept, and graph a line from its equation in slope-intercept form. Now let's actually see the Classcraft in action. Alright, so here we are. Let's let it load for a second. Okay. So here you can see we're on Classcraft, and here's my classes. So you can have multiple, but I just set up one for the purpose of this activity. So I'm going to hit play here. And what you'll notice is it starts off by giving me a list of all my students over here on the left. And students are actually able to create their own characters. So you'll see I've created one here. Let's click on another one so we can kind of walk through it. So if I pick this second student here, I can hit set up character, and they have 3 different options, which gives them different bonuses down here at the bottom, making it really game-like because usually different characters have different benefits and different downsides. So let's say they wanted to choose healer. We're going to select that and hit next. Then your student can select the look, so they can decide which character they would like to use. Alright, so we're just going to click the first one here. And then they get to choose a power. So there's a healing power, meditation, nature's guidance. And these change depending on the character that you chose. And so again, each of them have different bonuses or downsides that you'll notice over here. So we're going to click on healing to finish this character, and now your student would be done. And so you can also put your students into teams, so they'll have team accountability for things. And so you'll see that's what I've done with these groups of students. Alright, looking back at the players, one other thing I want to point out here, you can add and subtract, as I mentioned before, XP to your students for doing certain things. So these were all created by Classcraft, but you can also set up your own reward terms if there are certain things that you want to see or don't want to see from your students. And then also taking away for negative behaviors. Alright, let's look at the actual activity. So I'm going to click over here on quests. So the teacher can set up as many quests as they would like, and I set up a specific quest on linear equations. So looking at the introduction, this is where the students would start as they go through the quest, and each phase of the quest unlocks as they move through the previous one. So here's just an overview. This is what I see as the teacher, but the students would go right into the story. And so the story here is you and your teammates are on a mission to save your math teacher. You must travel from town to town where you must answer a question about linear equations before you can move on to the next town. Your math teacher will be saved if you can make it to the final town. So they have kind of an overall goal that they're trying to do. So then they would move on to the first quest. And so again, there's some sort of story or paragraph to lead into their task. Then they'll follow the task. And so this one is looking at the different types of slopes that they might see and defining a general rule. Then we'll go to the next task. And the next task they're trying to find slope. Again, it has another story or some piece of information that they need before doing the task. Then we have another short little story here, moving on to a task. So here they're going to be playing another game actually on Desmos called Marble Slides to practice putting their slope-intercept form of lines to use. Then they're going to work on writing equations using this problem here. And then they have one final challenge that they have to do before they have completed this quest. Alright, so that's about all I have to show you here for Classcraft, so let's move back over to the presentation. Okay. So some of the benefits of using Gamecraft, or Classcraft, are the competition and collaboration aspects. So some students really thrive with competition and they like competing against their peers. It motivates them to do better. But another nice aspect about Classcraft is that it's not all about competition because it shows you that the class's overall XP, so it also is a joint effort and the class can work together to try and get as high of an XP score as they possibly can. It also helps a lot with engagement because it really interests the students and it can relate to a lot of students' interests when they enjoy playing games. It can also help motivate them, both intrinsic and extrinsic, because it starts to help build their intrinsic motivation when they're interested in the topic. And it can also, like I said, connect to student interests, which we know then increases engagement. Some challenges of using Gamecraft, however, the first thing is that it requires access to technology, which we know not all students have the same access to technology. Some students may not have technology at home, which would mean that this might be something that you only do in school sometimes. Next, not all students enjoy competition. Sometimes it can be a little overwhelming for students and it doesn't necessarily motivate them, so there definitely need to be some other things in play for these students. Students might also miss deadlines for assignments if you're using this for homework if the due dates aren't also posted elsewhere. So if you use something like Google Classroom, it might be a good idea to also post due dates there. And then finally, students may just become overwhelmed by too many e-resources because there's so many things we're trying to use in the classroom now. I know for math, we use GeoGebra and Desmos a lot, so throwing in another e-resource just sometimes is too much for students. So where do I think this gaming move will go next? I think that gaming is a good way to connect with certain students because a lot of students are interested in games and it's something that they enjoy doing outside of school. So it's a good way to connect with the students who enjoy that. It can also increase engagement and interest in the content. But as with everything, I do think there needs to be a balance with how much is incorporated because it is important for students to have intrinsic motivation, and while I think gaming can build some intrinsic motivation, most of it is really extrinsic. I do think with time that game-based learning will become more engaging and exciting as technology develops and becomes more available in schools. But one hope that I have is for schools to have virtual reality academic games but I think this is far off for many schools because some struggle to even get one-to-one technology in terms of laptops for students. But gamification and game-based learning will get better with time. And hopefully more equity across schools will also come with time, allowing gaming to move even further. So thank you so much for joining me for this presentation.